Every army that ever marched is here. Romans and Mongols stand within shouting distance of each other, and do not speak the same language, and have never shared a battlefield, and share one now. Macedonian phalanxes form beside Napoleonic line infantry. Spartan hoplites in bronze and leather press against Persian immortals, who once killed their grandfathers at Thermopylae. Viking raiders and samurai swordsmen, and crusader knights, and Egyptian chariot crews, and Chinese imperial crossbowmen, and Aztec warriors in obsidian-edged armor. Every fighting doctrine humanity ever conceived, assembled on the flat chalk plains of northern France, stretching from horizon to horizon, and beyond both. Against them, the United States military, 1.3 million active-duty soldiers, approximately 13,000 aircraft, nearly 500 warships, and an air force capable of putting a 2,000-pound guided bomb through a specific window from 15 kilometers above the cloud line without the crew ever seeing the building. The combined ancient force numbers somewhere between 40 and 80 million soldiers, by every documented historical estimate across every recorded civilization. They carry swords, spears, recurve bows, early matchlock firearms, and bronze cannons that reach perhaps 1 kilometer on a clear day with favorable wind. They have cavalry, they have siege engines, they have supply chains built on horses and oxen and human feet, and they have generals, men who, in their own era, were the most tactically dangerous minds their civilizations had ever produced. Caesar, Genghis Khan, Alexander, Hannibal, Napoleon, each one a different answer to the same question. How do you break an army? None of them has ever fought one they could not see. Somewhere between 3 and 5 million of them will be dead before a single American soldier fires a single round. Not from disease, not from failed logistics, from the air. The sun rises over the Somme Valley. The grass is flat and wet and cold. The chalk underneath holds the frost through the morning and does not release it. Fog sits 2 meters off the ground in every direction and does not move. 40 million men watch the same horizon. They are looking for cavalry, for dust clouds, for the front rank of an enemy that moves at the speed of horses. They have never agreed on anything in their lives. Today they agree on one thing: the enemy is there. Each F-35 has a radar cross-section of approximately 0.001 square meters, the radar signature of a golf ball. It carries 4 AMRAAM missiles with an engagement range of 180 kilometers and 2,000-pound JDAM precision-guided bombs, accurate to within 3 meters of any GPS coordinate on Earth. The pilot never needs to see the target. The aircraft does not need to be seen at all. The B-2 Spirit flies at 15 kilometers altitude, above the ceiling of every surface-to-air weapon the ancient world can conceive of. A single sortie carries 80 GBU-38 guided bombs, 80 separate impact points, delivered in a single pass over a formation stretching kilometers in every direction. The crew of 2 never descends below the clouds. The people on the ground never hear the aircraft until the bombs are already falling. HIMARS fires GPS-guided rockets to 80 kilometers, with GMLRS munitions, and ballistic missiles to 300 kilometers with ATACMS. 300 kilometers is the distance from Paris to Brussels. The launcher fires and relocates in under 3 minutes. There is no counter-battery response possible against a system that moves faster than any ancient army can communicate its position. The M1A2 Abrams weighs 68 tons. Its 120mm smoothbore cannon fires the M829A3, a depleted uranium penetrator that defeats 800mm of rolled homogeneous armor at 2,000 meters. A Mongol composite bow reaches 300 meters on a good day. A Roman ballista reaches perhaps 100. The gap between those numbers is not a tactical problem. It is a categorical one. This force was not optimized against ancient armies. It was built to defeat other modern militaries, states with radar, surface-to-air missiles, electronic warfare suites, and hardened command bunkers. Against ancient armies, that overdesign does not create a challenge. It creates an equation. 40 to 80 million soldiers with no unified command, no shared language, no common supply chain, and no agreed doctrine. Caesar wants to hold the line and let the enemy exhaust itself against prepared positions. Genghis Khan wants to disperse immediately and strike from 4 directions at once. Alexander wants to identify the enemy commander and personally lead the cavalry through the gap his death creates. Napoleon wants to mass artillery on a single point, break the center, and roll up both flanks before sunset. All four are correct by the internal logic of their own era. All four are incompatible with each other. The Mongol cavalry, 300,000 riders on steppe horses trained since birth, is the fastest force on the field. The Roman legions hold formation under fire better than any infantry their era produced. The Macedonian Sarissa phalanx presents a front wall of 5-meter iron-tipped pikes that nothing in the ancient world could break head-on. Napoleonic artillery, the most technically sophisticated weapon system on the ancient side, fires cast iron balls to perhaps 1.5 kilometers. HIMARS fires to 80. Every one of these forces was built for the same fundamental environment. Enemies they could see, reach, and kill within the distance a man can throw a spear or loose an arrow. Remove that environment. Put them against something that fires from beyond the horizon and strikes from above the weather. And every doctrine, every hard-won adaptation, every tactical mind on that field is working from a model of war that stopped being accurate before the first bomb fell. At 0200, the first satellite pass confirms what American intelligence already suspected. The formation stretches 140 kilometers east to west and nearly 80 kilometers north to south. It is the largest concentration of human beings ever assembled for war. The number does not matter. What matters is the density, shoulder to shoulder across the chalk plains of northern France, 40 million men breathing the same cold air, waiting for a dawn they will not live to see. The first ATACMS missiles launch from 300 kilometers away. They are in the air for 6 minutes. There is no warning. The sound comes after the ground opens. The first salvo targets the densest command concentrations, the areas where multiple banners cluster, where riders move in organized patterns that satellite imagery reads as coordination. Caesar's command tent, the Mongol courier network, Napoleon's artillery park. 47 missiles land in the first salvo. Each one carries a payload of 900 M74 submunitions, scattering across a radius of 200 meters. The ground erupts in a pattern that has no name in any ancient language. Within the first hour, the B-2s are overhead. A single aircraft releases 64 GBU-38 JDAM bombs in one pass. 64 detonations, each within 3 meters of its GPS coordinate, walk through the tightest formations on the field. The Macedonian phalanx, 16 men deep, 5-meter sarissas aligned forward, takes 12 simultaneous impacts across its front 3 ranks. It ceases to exist as a formation. A Roman centurion in the 14th cohort watches the man to his left disappear. Not fall, disappear. One moment he is there, the next there is a pressure wave and heat, and the man is simply gone. The centurion raises his scutum and looks for the enemy line. There is no enemy line. There is smoke in every direction, and a sound he has no word for, and the ground is shaking in a rhythm that matches no weapon he has ever heard. He holds his position. He is a Roman soldier. This is what Roman soldiers do. He holds for 40 seconds. Then, the next salvo lands. Genghis Khan sees the pattern before anyone else does. He does not understand the weapons. He does not need to. The strikes are densest where the formations are densest. The answer is not to advance. The answer is to disappear. Within 20 minutes of the first salvo, every Mongol rider receives the same order through a courier chain faster than any other command network on the field. Disperse. Groups of 10. No banners, no formations. Spread across 40 kilometers and ride. 300,000 riders dissolve into the landscape like water into sand. The strike rate against dispersed cavalry drops by 60% immediately. It is the right answer derived from the right analysis, using the wrong data. Khan has deduced that concentration creates vulnerability without understanding why. He is still operating inside a kill radius his dispersion cannot fully escape. Individual riders die. They die less efficiently than formed infantry, but they die. By the end of the first day, the ancient force numbers somewhere between 30 and 35 million. The Americans have not lost a single soldier. They have expended roughly 4,000 precision-guided munitions. Annual production is 14,000. At current expenditure rates, precision ammunition runs dry in 72 hours. The ground phase was always coming. It is arriving faster than the plan assumed. The M1A2 columns cross the line of departure at 0300 on the second day. 600 tanks across a front of 30 kilometers. Each carries 40 main gun rounds, 40 engagements per vehicle. Against 30 million surviving soldiers, that is not firepower. That is arithmetic. Caesar's legions reach the tank line in formation, cohort after cohort, shields locked, moving at a walk through 6 hours of bomb craters. Their losses have been catastrophic, and they do not know it, because their unit integrity has held. Each cohort still has a tribune. The command structure is intact. This is why they last longer than almost anyone else on the field. At 30 meters, the tank cannot depress its weapons far enough. Legionaries strike composite armor with gladii and pila, steel rings against the hull. Nothing penetrates. Nothing moves. But the crew inside cannot see. Vision ports are blocked by bodies. The tank stops. This is the constraint, not the armor, not the firepower, the visibility. By the third day, the ancient force has no coherent command. Not because the generals are dead, most are not yet, because they cannot agree. Caesar wants to concentrate everything on the tank lines and accept the casualties to close the distance. Genghis Khan wants to abandon the plains and draw the Americans into the forests to the east. Alexander wants to find the American commander and kill him. Napoleon wants to locate the enemy artillery for counter-battery fire. His aides cannot explain that the artillery is a vehicle that moves and is currently 80 kilometers away. A Predator drone has been tracking the command group for 40 minutes. A Hellfire missile arrives before anyone in the group hears the aircraft. Napoleon is dead before the argument ends. His last order, find the gun line, dies with him. There is no one left who almost understood. The argument takes 4 hours. In those 4 hours, American close air support flies 240 sorties over the stalled front. The ancient force loses another 2 million soldiers to precision strikes. While its greatest military minds argue about a battle, each is trying to fight in a different century. The army does not break in a single moment. It dissolves. Formation by formation, the coherent force becomes a dispersed mass of men. The Spartans are the last to break ranks. They always are. They die facing forward, in rank order, the way Spartan soldiers have always died. It changes nothing. The battle does not end. It stops being a battle. The number is 60 million, the entire population of France, dead in 4 days on French soil. That is the scale of what this number means. The ancient force entered the field at 40 to 80 million. What remains, perhaps 10 to 15 million, is no longer an organized military. American losses stand at approximately 50,000 soldiers. Nearly all of them died in the ground phase, not from weapons. No ancient blade penetrates M1A2 composite armor. No ancient projectile reaches a pilot at 15 kilometers. They died from being physically overwhelmed. Individual vehicles isolated, hatches pried, crews lost to men with knives and bare hands, and the specific desperation of someone who has nothing left to fight with and keeps fighting anyway. 50,000 Americans died because the ancient force, despite losing everything else, never lost the willingness to close the distance. At the tactical level, this engagement reveals something precise. The kill chain worked exactly as designed. The F-35 never faced a radar lock. The B-2 never triggered a surface-to-air response. HIMARS fired and relocated without counter-battery interference. The M1A2 absorbed everything the ancient world could bring and kept moving. The kill ratio, roughly 1,000 ancient soldiers dead for every 1 American, is not a triumph of courage or doctrine. It is the output of systems built to defeat opponents who themselves had modern weapons, applied against armies that did not. The overdesign became the margin. At the operational level, the ancient commanders reveal something about the limits of genius. Genghis Khan adapted faster than anyone on the field. Pattern recognition without a framework. The fastest command network in human history. The correct tactical answer derived from incomplete data. He bought his men 36 additional hours. Caesar held formation under fire that would have scattered any other army on the field. Because Roman discipline was not a tactic, it was a civilization's entire answer to fear. It held until it couldn't. Alexander spent 2 days looking for the American commander to kill him personally, because every battle he ever won began exactly that way, and he died having never found a center to break. Napoleon asked the right question, where is the gun line? And died before his aides found a way to explain there wasn't one. 4 different answers to the same war. All of them correct in their own century. None of them sufficient in this one. In the weeks following, the surviving 10 to 15 million move east in columns that stretch for kilometers across the same chalk plains where the battle was fought, foraging, fighting each other for food, dying of exposure on ground still cratered from the first night's strikes. They are not an army. They are not a threat to a modern military. They are the largest refugee crisis in human history on a continent with no infrastructure to absorb them. The American military wins the battle in 4 days. The aftermath takes years. What changed is the air. What did not change is the ground. Technology changed 3 specific things. First, the standoff distance. Every war before the 20th century required proximity to kill. A sword needs a meter. A spear needs 5. A bow needs 200. The effective range of ancient weapons defines the geography of ancient battle. 2 armies close until they can reach each other, and then kill each other until one side breaks. A Hellfire missile fires from 8 kilometers. HIMARS reaches 80. The B-2 drops from 15 kilometers altitude. The engagement envelope of a modern American force is measured in hundreds of kilometers, and the enemy on the receiving end has no instrument to detect it, no weapon to reach it, and no doctrine that accounts for it. That distance is not a tactical advantage. It is a civilizational one. Second, precision. A Napoleonic artillery barrage kills in a radius. A JDAM kills at a point, within 3 meters of a GPS coordinate anywhere on Earth. Precision at scale means the ancient force could not disperse its way to safety. Genghis Khan tried. His riders spread across 40 kilometers of open ground. Satellites tracked individual heat signatures. The targeting never stopped being accurate. Dispersion that defeated every enemy he ever faced did not defeat an enemy that could see him from space. Third, the kill chain speed. From satellite detection to ATACMS impact, 6 minutes. From pilot acquisition to JDAM release, under 30 seconds. The ancient force had no decision cycle fast enough to respond to a threat operating on that timeline. By the time a courier reached any commander, the launcher had already moved, and the next salvo was in the air. Technology did not change the ground. The plains of northern France are the same chalk and clay they have always been. They require bodies to hold them. Tanks advance across them. They cannot govern them. Aircraft strike everything that moves on them. They cannot distinguish a starving soldier from a civilian. The American military won the air in hours. It took 4 days to end the battle on the ground. And the 10 million survivors moving east without food or command, that is not a military question. Modern technology has no weapons system for political problems. It never did. 405,000 Americans died in the Second World War against enemies with tanks, aircraft, artillery, and industrial supply chains. In this scenario, against 40 to 80 million soldiers carrying swords, spears, recurve bows, and cast iron cannonballs, the United States loses approximately 200,000. That is 205,000 people who came home, 205,000 families that stayed whole, 205,000 names that do not get cut into stone. That is what 80 years of military development actually looks like. Not larger victories, not faster wars. People who came home instead of dying. Not a battle between civilizations. A demonstration of what happens when one civilization stopped fighting with bodies. If that's the kind of question you want answered, subscribe. There are more of them.